I'm Ava, 27, and my story isn't some rags to riches fairy tale. Not exactly. It's more of a stubborn girl gets even saga. For years, I endured the subtle jabs, the condescending glances, the thinly veiled disgust from the two people who were supposed to be my biggest supporters, my parents. They were the proud owners of Chic Threads, a string of high-end boutiques scattered across the city, places where silk blouses cost more than my monthly rent and cashmere sweaters were practically heirlooms. And my parents, Robert and Eleanor Morales, had built their empire from the ground up, starting with a single small shop in a trendy neighborhood, meticulously curating inventory, charming customers, and expanding with shrewd business acumen. They prided themselves on their refined taste, their impeccable style, and their exclusive clientele. They moved in circles where designer labels were a given and conversations revolved around market trends and investment portfolios. And then there was me, their only daughter, who, after graduating with a degree in English literature, decided to take a cashier job, at a large, generic department store, Megamart. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The phone call informing them of my career choice was, to put it mildly, explosive. My mother's voice, usually a melodic purr, became a sharp, indignant squawk. A cashier, Ava? After all we've invested in your education? After all the opportunities we've provided? My father, ever the calmer, more calculating of the two, chimed in with a more controlled but equally devastating disappointment. Darling, we always envisioned you in a more substantial role. Perhaps something in marketing, or even management, within a reputable firm. This is simply a waste of your potential. Words, though not overtly harsh in that initial conversation, carried a weight that pressed down on me, a heavy cloak of disapproval. Family dinners, once a lively affair filled with laughter and often discussions of their latest business triumphs, transformed into thinly veiled interrogations and patronizing pity. So, still at Megamart, dear? My mother would ask, her tone laced with a forced sweetness that made my teeth ache. Are you perhaps looking for something more challenging? My father would often introduce me to their friends with a sigh. This is our daughter, Ava. She's, between careers at the moment, exploring her options, you see. The implication was clear. I was adrift, directionless, and utterly beneath their esteemed social standing. They never directly offered financial assistance, not for my living expenses, not for my student loans, nothing. It was their way of saying, without uttering the words, that if I was going to make such poor choices, I would have to fend for myself. And I did. My tiny apartment, perched on the third floor of an old building with squeaky floorboards and a perpetually leaky faucet, became my sanctuary. It was small, but it was mine, paid for with the modest wages I earned at Megamart. Every morning I would pull on the scratchy polyester uniform, the fluorescent lights of the store a stark contrast to the elegant chandeliers that adorned Chic Threads. I learned to smile through the endless parade of customers, to count change with lightning speed, to handle irritable shoppers and even more irritable managers. It wasn't glamorous, not by a long shot, but it was honest work, and more importantly, it was teaching me something my parents' world never could, the value of a dollar earned through sheer effort. I started a meticulous budget. Every penny I made was accounted for. A portion went to rent, another to groceries, and a significant chunk, no matter how small, went into a separate savings account. My parents, in their grand world of designer suits and expensive wine, wouldn't have understood the quiet satisfaction I found in watching that number grow, however slowly. I ate ramen noodles, walked everywhere, and avoided any unnecessary expenses. My friends, most of whom had already embarked on glamorous corporate careers or were traveling the world, often invited me out. I usually declined, fabricating excuses about being too busy or not feeling well. The truth was, I couldn't afford their lifestyle, and I refused to let my parents' financial independence, or rather, my lack of it, become another source of their disdain. It wasn't just about money, though. It was about respect. Every time my mother subtly rearranged my hair at a family gathering, suggesting it looked a bit messy, or my father critiqued my choice of sensible shoes, I felt a familiar prickle of defiance. They saw me as an extension of themselves, a reflection of their success, and when I chose a path that deviated from their perfectly manicured expectations, I became a blight on their carefully constructed image. One evening, during a particularly excruciating family dinner, my father launched into a lengthy monologue about the importance of networking. Ava, you simply must put yourself out there. Attend industry events, meet the right people. You never know who could open a door for you. My mother nodded sagely. Exactly, darling. Opportunities don't just fall into your lap. You have to cultivate them. I smiled politely, stirring my pasta. We were utterly oblivious to the irony of their words. I was cultivating something all right. Something they would never see coming. My boyfriend Ben Carter was my rock. We had met in college, two quiet souls drawn together by a shared love for obscure literature and late-night talks. Ben was everything my parents weren't. Grounded, empathetic, and genuinely supportive. He was also incredibly intelligent, with a keen business mind that he had inherited from his own entrepreneurial family. His parents owned a successful tech startup, and while Ben worked there, he had his own ambitions. He was my confidant, the only person I truly shared my frustrations and my secret aspirations with. They're just so condescending, I'd tell him, curled up on his sofa after another demoralizing family dinner. It's like they think I'm some kind of charity case. Ben would stroke my hair, his gentle touch a balm to my wounded pride. They don't understand, Ava. They're so wrapped up in their own world, they can't see the strength it takes to do what you're doing. You're building something for yourself, from the ground up, and that's more admirable than any inherited fortune. He believed in me, truly believed in me, and that belief was more valuable than any inheritance. He was also the one who helped me devise the perfect plan, the one that would eventually turn their world upside down. He saw the fire in my eyes, the quiet determination that simmered beneath my calm exterior. He knew my resentment wasn't just about pride, it was about proving them wrong, about demonstrating my own worth on my own terms. One evening, about 4 years after I started at Megamart, I was browsing a financial news website, something I had started doing regularly to educate myself. An article caught my eye, a speculative piece about the current struggles of mid-tier retail chains. Chic Threads wasn't explicitly mentioned, but the descriptions of declining foot traffic and increasing overhead costs felt eerily familiar. I'd heard my parents grumbling about market shifts and changing consumer habits for months, though they always brushed it off as minor inconveniences. I brought it up to Ben later that week. Have you heard anything about Chic Threads? They seem to be struggling. Ben, ever the diligent researcher, had already been doing some digging. Actually, yes. There have been whispers. They're heavily leveraged, apparently. Took out some big loans to expand into those new luxury malls. And the returns aren't materializing as quickly as they'd hoped. Plus, their online presence is almost non-existent, and that's where the real money is being made these days. Ooh. A flicker of an idea ignited within me, a tiny spark in the dark. Could this be it? Could this be my opportunity? It felt audacious, almost laughable, but the thought refused to be extinguished. Oh. Do you think they might be in serious trouble? Ben looked at me, a thoughtful expression on his face. It's certainly possible. A few more quarters of underperformance, and they could be looking at some very difficult decisions. Over the next few months, the whispers about Chic Threads grew louder. My parents, despite their usual carefully constructed facade of prosperity, began to show cracks in their armor, and my mother's once impeccable suits seemed a little less crisp, her usual vivacious chatter replaced by a strained quietness. My father, always so composed, developed a nervous habit of tapping his fingers on the table during dinner. They stopped talking about their latest business ventures, and instead, their conversations became guarded, hushed, often ending abruptly when I entered the room. One evening, after another particularly strained dinner where my parents had barely touched their food, I overheard a snippet of conversation from their study. The door was ajar, and my mother's voice, thick with desperation, floated out. Robert, we simply can't make payroll next month if sales don't pick up. The bank is threatening to call in the loan. My father's reply was a low growl of frustration. I know, Eleanor, I know. I'm trying everything. We're bleeding money. My heart pounded in my chest. Oh. This was it. This was my moment. The years of quiet resentment, the belittling comments, the dismissals, all of it coalesced into a fierce resolve. I knew what I had to do. The next day, I called Ben. It's worse than we thought, I told him, recounting the overheard conversation. Ooh, they're on the brink. Ben listened intently, his silence a testament to the seriousness of the situation. Okay, he said after a moment, his voice calm and steady. This changes things. We need to move quickly, and we need to be strategic. Our plan began to take shape, meticulously crafted, each step carefully considered. Ben, with his family's connections and his own growing network in the financial world, was instrumental. He knew the right people to talk to, the right questions to ask, the right avenues to explore. He became my silent partner, my invisible hand, guiding me through the complex labyrinth of corporate acquisitions. First, we needed to assess the true extent of Chic Thread's financial distress. Ben managed to get his hands on some public financial filings, which confirmed our suspicions. The company was indeed in a precarious position, burdened by significant debt and declining revenue. They had overextended themselves, betting big on an expansion strategy that had failed to pay off. Their management, focused on maintaining a facade of luxury, had neglected the crucial aspects of modern retail, like a robust e-commerce platform and efficient inventory management. Next, we needed capital. My savings, while substantial for me, were a mere drop in the ocean compared to what would be needed to acquire a majority share of a struggling retail chain. This was where Ben truly shined. He proposed an arrangement. He would act as the silent investor, providing the necessary funds through a series of shell corporations and holding companies, obscuring my identity completely. His family's wealth and influence would be a crucial shield, ensuring that my parents would have no idea who was truly behind the acquisition until it was too late. It was a risky move, but one that resonated with the burgeoning ambition inside me. Are you sure about this, Ben? I asked him one evening, my voice laced with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. It's a huge undertaking. And if they ever find out... He squeezed my hand. Ava, you deserve this. You've worked harder than anyone I know, and you've put up with more than anyone should have to. This isn't just about revenge, it's about justice. And I'll be with you every step of the way. His conviction bolstered mine. The process was long and arduous. It involved countless late-night meetings, poring over legal documents, negotiating with bankers and financial advisors, all while maintaining my carefully constructed facade of a simple cashier at Kohl. Mega Mart. My parents, oblivious to the storm brewing around them, continued their pattern of polite condescension. They were too preoccupied with their own dwindling fortunes to notice the subtle shift in my demeanor, the newfound confidence that simmered beneath my quiet exterior. I learned more about business in those few months than I had in all my years of college. I studied market trends, analyzed financial reports, and immersed myself in the intricacies of corporate law. Ben, patient and endlessly knowledgeable, was my tutor, explaining complex concepts in a way that made sense. He helped me understand the leverage points, the legal loopholes, and the power dynamics at play. We built a team of trusted advisors, all bound by strict non-disclosure agreements, who were equally invested in the success of our clandestine operation. The negotiations with the banks holding Chic Thread's debt were particularly intense. They were eager to offload the troubled loans and were surprised by the unexpected interest from a seemingly unknown entity. Ben, through his carefully constructed proxies, presented a compelling offer, a combination of debt restructuring and an outright purchase of a majority stake. Banks, seeing an opportunity to cut their losses, were receptive. My parents, meanwhile, were scrambling. They held desperate meetings with their own financial advisors, trying to find a way to stave off bankruptcy. They were exploring every option, from selling off individual stores to seeking new investors, but time was running out. Their desperation was palpable, a stark contrast to their usual aura of unshakable confidence. I observed it all from a distance, a silent observer in their collapsing world, my heart a mixture of grim satisfaction and a strange, almost detached pity. Finally, after months of intricate maneuvering, the deal was done. The papers were signed, the funds transferred. The majority share of Chic Threads, the company my parents had built with their own hands, now belonged to me, through my silent investor, Ben. The day I received the confirmation email, I felt a surge of exhilaration so potent, it almost brought me to my knees. It wasn't just about the money or even the power, it was about validation. It was about proving them wrong. Not just to them, but to myself. I called Ben immediately. "It's done," I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. "Congratulations, Ava," he said, his voice warm with genuine pride. "You did it." The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I had never known. This was the day. The day I would finally step out of the shadows. I carefully chose my outfit, not a Megamart uniform, but a sleek tailored suit that exuded quiet authority. I styled my hair, applied just the right amount of makeup, and looked at my reflection in the mirror. Gone was the timid girl, the one who had absorbed her parents' condescension like a sponge. In her place was a woman, resolute and ready. I arrived at the Chic Threads headquarters, a sprawling, modern building that had once been the epitome of my parents' success. The glass doors slid open silently, and I walked through the opulent lobby, my heels clicking softly on the polished marble floors. The receptionist, a stern-faced woman named Brenda who had been with Chic Threads for decades, looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and confusion. She clearly recognized me from family functions, but couldn't quite place why I was here, dressed like this. "Good morning, Brenda," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I have a meeting with Robert and Ava Morales." Brenda hesitated, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Ooh, do they know you're coming, dear?" "They will," I replied, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. I made my way to the executive floor. A space I had only visited a handful of times. Always as a child. Always feeling like an intruder in my parents' grand world. I pushed open the heavy oak doors to my father's office, and there they were, seated across from him at his large mahogany desk, looking tired and defeated. They were in the midst of a heated discussion, their voices low and strained. "We have to sell the Sedona store, Robert. It's our only option," my mother was saying, her voice thin with desperation. My father ran a hand through his thinning hair. "But Eleanor, that's our flagship. It's practically our identity." I looked up, startled, as I entered. Their eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in confusion. My mother's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched in disbelief. "Ava, what on earth are you doing here? Is everything all right?" My father, ever the more composed, recovered quickly. "Ava, darling, this is a private discussion. Is there something you need?" His tone was polite, but carried an underlying edge of irritation, a subtle reminder of my perceived insignificance in their world. I walked further into the room, stopping directly in front of his desk. I took a deep breath, the moment I had envisioned for years finally upon me. "Actually, yes," I said, my voice calm, clear, and unwavering. "I'm here because this is no longer a private discussion, it's my business." My mother let out a small, incredulous gasp. My father stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Your business? What are you talking about, Ava? Have you gone mad?" "Not at all, father," I replied, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across my face. "As of this morning, through a majority acquisition, I am the new owner of Chic Threads." The silence in the room was deafening. My mother's mouth hung open, her perfectly manicured hand flying to her chest as if to quell a sudden pain. My father's face, usually so composed, contorted into a mask of shock and then a furious disbelief. "This is some kind of sick joke," he finally sputtered, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. How could you possibly? You underestimated me, I said, my voice still calm, but with an underlying steel they had never heard before. You saw a cashier, a failure, someone who was between careers. While you were busy belittling me, I was learning, I was saving, and I was planning. I watched as the realization dawned on them, slowly, painfully. The years of quiet mockery, the dismissive comments, the financial neglect, it all came flooding back to them. Now seen through a different lens, their faces, once arrogant and self-assured, were now etched with a mixture of shock, betrayal, and a dawning humiliation. You bought our company? My mother whispered, her voice barely audible. You, the one we helped through college, the one who couldn't even hold down a decent job? But hypocrisy of her statement hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Precisely, I confirmed. And speaking of jobs, that brings me to the purpose of my visit today. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. As the new owner, I've had to make some difficult decisions regarding the future of Chic Threads. And unfortunately, those decisions involve a change in leadership. My father's eyes blazed with a fierce, wounded pride. Are you saying you? I am, I finished, my gaze meeting his directly, unflinchingly. Robert and Eleanor Morales, your employment with Chic Threads is terminated, effective immediately. The words hung in the air, heavy with consequence. My mother burst into tears, her elegant facade crumbling completely. Ava, no! You can't do this. We built this, we poured our lives into it. And you let it crumble. Ass. I countered, my voice firm. Poor management, unsustainable expansion, a complete lack of adaptation to a changing market. You ran this company into the ground, Mother. I'm just here to pick up the pieces. My father, though visibly shaken, found his voice again, though it was now laced with a desperate plea. Ava, please, think about what you're doing. We're your parents. This is our legacy. Your legacy is debt and a failing business. Why? And a failing business, said, my voice softening just slightly, a flicker of the old Ava, but quickly hardening again. And my legacy, from this day forward, is building something new, something sustainable, something that actually thrives. My mother, through her tears, looked at me, her eyes pleading. Please, Ava, give us a second chance. We'll do anything. We'll work harder. We'll listen to your ideas. Just don't do this. I looked at them, truly looked at them, and for the first time, I saw not the formidable, condescending figures of my childhood, but two broken people. Their carefully constructed world shattered. A wave of something akin to pity washed over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the years of suppressed anger and humiliation. This wasn't about cruelty. It was about consequence. I understand your desperation, I said, my voice now devoid of any emotion. And because you are my parents, and because I believe in second chances, albeit very different ones than you might expect, I am willing to offer you a new opportunity. Our faces, still streaked with tears, held a flicker of hope. My mother sniffled. Anything, Ava, anything. Good, I said, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching my lips. I'm offering you both positions as cashiers. At the new Chic Threads, the pay will be minimum wage. Of course, and you'll report directly to the store manager. No special treatment, no executive privileges. Just the same job I had, the one you mocked me for years. Their faces, which had momentarily brightened, now foul, replaced by a fresh wave of shock and disbelief. My father, who had been on the verge of speaking, clamped his mouth shut, his jaw working silently. My mother, still tearful, stared at me as if I had suddenly grown a second head. A cashier? My mother finally choked out, her voice filled with outrage. You expect us, the founders of Chic Threads, to work as cashiers? It's honest work, I said, echoing their past dismissals of my own job. And it's a chance to learn the business from the ground up, something you seem to have forgotten how to do. Take it or leave it. The offer is only open for 24 hours. I stood there, watching their reactions, the full weight of the moment sinking in. They had dismissed me, belittled me, and left me to fend for myself. Now, the tables had turned, irrevocably. The power had shifted, and the quiet girl they had once mocked was now holding all the cards. I knew, with absolute certainty, that this was just the beginning of my new chapter, and the painful, yet necessary, end of theirs. The initial shock from my parents eventually morphed into a furious, indignant refusal. They scoffed at the cashier offer, deeming it an insult beneath their dignity. My mother declared she would rather starve than serve customers from behind a counter, and my father, in a fit of injured pride, stormed out of the office muttering about unfilial behavior and betrayal, and I hadn't expected them to accept. Not really. The offer was as much a symbolic gesture as it was a genuine proposition. A mirror held up to their own past condescension. It was about proving a point, not about forcing them into a job they clearly despised. The news of the acquisition, once public, sent shockwaves through their social circle. The calls started almost immediately, a flurry of shocked inquiries and thinly veiled criticisms from their friends and business associates. My phone, usually quiet save for texts from Ben or my few close friends, buzzed incessantly with blocked numbers and unfamiliar names. I ignored most of them. The few I did answer were met with my calm, unwavering assertion that Chic Threads was under new management and I was looking forward to revitalizing the brand. Hushed whispers and curious glances followed me even when I ventured out for groceries. I had become the subject of local gossip. The Curtin, ungrateful daughter who had stolen her parents' company. But I didn't care. Their opinions no longer held any power over me. My focus was now entirely on Chic Threads. The company was indeed a mess, far worse than I had initially anticipated. The stores were outdated, the inventory disorganized, and the staff, though loyal, were demoralized by the constant fear of layoffs and the increasingly erratic management of my parents. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, audits, and strategic planning sessions. I brought in a new team, a mix of seasoned retail professionals and young, innovative minds who understood the importance of digital transformation. Ben, though still my silent partner, was always there for guidance, offering invaluable insights and acting as a sounding board for my often radical ideas. My first priority was to streamline operations. We implemented new inventory management systems, invested in a robust e-commerce platform, and launched a comprehensive digital marketing campaign. We redesigned the store layouts, opting for a more modern, minimalist aesthetic that appealed to a younger, more diverse demographic. We introduced new product lines, focusing on sustainable and ethically sourced fashion, a niche my parents had completely ignored, deeming it too niche for their traditional clientele. One of the biggest challenges was winning over the existing staff. Many of them had been with Chic Threads for years, some even predating my parents' ownership. They were loyal to the old ways and initially wary of the drastic changes I was implementing. I held town hall meetings, listened to their concerns, and assured them that their jobs were secure. I emphasized that my vision was to build a thriving, sustainable business, one that valued its employees and its customers. Slowly, gradually, their skepticism began to turn into cautious optimism, and then, into enthusiastic support. I also made a point of spending time on the store floors, something my parents rarely did. I spoke to the sales associates, learned about their daily challenges, and listened to their ideas. I even spent a few hours behind the cash register, reminding myself of the customer service skills I had honed at Megamart. It was a humbling experience, and it reinforced my belief that understanding the front lines of the business was crucial to effective leadership. I saw the value in every role, from the stockroom assistant to the senior manager, recognizing that every cog in the machine was essential for its smooth operation. The physical transformation of the stores was remarkable. We started with the flagship store, the one my parents had been so proud of, and transformed it from a stuffy, opulent space into a vibrant, inviting hub. We introduced interactive displays, hosted fashion workshops, and collaborated with local artists to create unique in-store experiences. The sales started to climb, slowly at first, then with increasing momentum. The local media, who had initially reported on the Morales family drama with a hint of schadenfreude, now began to feature chic threads in their revitalization segments praising its innovative approach and fresh aesthetic. My parents, meanwhile, had gone completely silent. I hadn't heard from them since that fateful day in the office. Their friends, however, kept me indirectly updated. They had apparently retreated to their vacation home in the mountains, a place they had always referred to as their sanctuary. They were living a quiet life, a stark contrast to their previous existence, filled with social engagements and business meetings. I often wondered if they ever thought about chic threads, if they ever regretted their past actions, or if they were simply consumed by their own pride and resentment. Part of me, the part that still yearned for their approval, wished they could see what I was building, but the stronger, more pragmatic part knew that their presence would only hinder my progress. 6 months into my ownership, Chic Threads was not just surviving, it was thriving. Sales had increased by nearly 30%, our online presence was robust, and we had expanded into new markets, launching pop-up shops in trendy urban centers. We were no longer just a boutique chain, we were a lifestyle brand, appealing to a new generation of conscious consumers. The financial situation had stabilized, and we were even starting to pay down the debt my parents had accumulated. One afternoon, as I was reviewing the quarterly financial reports, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something compelled me to answer. Ava? It's your mother. Her voice was soft, hesitant, completely devoid of its usual imperious tone. I felt a strange jolt. It had been 6 months. Mother. I replied, my voice neutral. I hope I'm not disturbing you, she began, her voice still tentative. Your father and we just wanted to see how you were doing. I knew this wasn't just a casual check-in. I'm doing well, Mother. Chic Threads is doing exceptionally well, actually. I couldn't resist a subtle jab. There was a pause, a small sigh on the other end. Yes, we've heard. It's quite remarkable what you've done. Her voice held a hint of grudging admiration, a crack in her carefully constructed facade of indifference. Thank you, I said, a small, tight smile forming on my lips. We were wondering, she continued, her voice gaining a touch more confidence, if you would perhaps consider having dinner with us. Just the 3 of us, no business talk, just family. I hesitated. The idea of sitting across from them, sharing a meal, after all that had transpired, felt surreal. But a part of me, a small, stubborn part, wanted to see them, to gauge their reactions, to witness their changed demeanor firsthand. And perhaps, just perhaps, I wanted to see if there was any genuine remorse beneath their newfound humility. All right, I said, surprising myself. One dinner, my choice of restaurant. She agreed readily, almost eagerly. We set a date for the following week. The restaurant I chose was a small, unassuming bistro, miles away from the pretentious, high-end establishments my parents usually frequented. It was quiet, intimate, and had a warmth that their usual haunts lacked. I arrived a few minutes early, and they were already there, seated at a corner table, looking somewhat out of place in their subdued but still expensive attire. My mother wore a simple cashmere sweater and my father a dark blazer, both far less ostentatious than their usual ensembles. As I approached, they both looked up, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and something that looked suspiciously like humility. My mother even managed a small, almost nervous smile. Ava, dear, she said, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. Hello, I replied, taking the seat opposite them. The initial conversation was stilted, filled with awkward silences. He talked about the weather, about trivial news, about anything but Chic Threads or our past. Then, my father cleared his throat, his gaze meeting mine. Ava, he began, his voice low. We owe you an apology. My heart gave a jolt. This was unexpected. We were wrong, he continued, his voice heavy with what sounded like genuine regret. We treated you terribly. We dismissed your choices, we underestimated your abilities, and we were simply too proud and too blind to see what you were truly capable of."
Ooh.
My mother, her eyes glistening, nodded in agreement. "He's right, darling. We were insufferable. We were so caught up in our own world, our own expectations, that we couldn't see the incredible person you were becoming. And we were jealous, in a way. Jealous of your pa. Independence, your resilience." I stared at them, my mind reeling. This was not the apology I had expected, or perhaps the apology I had braced myself for. It was deeper, more introspective, and more vulnerable than I had ever thought them capable of. The years of resentment, the bitterness, the carefully constructed walls I had built around my heart began to crack, just a little. "It wasn't easy," I said, my voice quiet. Being constantly judged, constantly dismissed. It hurt. My mother reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly as she touched mine. "We know, darling, and we are truly, truly sorry. We've had a lot of time to reflect, to realize how much we lost, not just the company but our relationship with you." My father nodded. "We made a lot of mistakes, Ava, and we're paying for them, but the biggest mistake was losing your respect and your affection." The dinner continued, and for the first time in years, we talked, truly talked. They asked about my plans for Chic Threads, not with judgment, but with genuine curiosity. They acknowledged their past failures, not with excuses, but with a surprising level of self-awareness. They even admitted they had been wrong about the importance of e-commerce and sustainable fashion. They were different, humbled by their fall from grace, softened by the harsh realities of their new lives. As the evening drew to a close, my mother looked at me, a wistful expression on her face. "You know, Ava, if you ever needed our help, in any capacity, we would be honored." I smiled, a genuine, unforced smile. "Thank you, Mother. I appreciate that." I knew, in that moment, that while our relationship would never be the same, a new, more honest foundation had been laid. The bitter taste of revenge had been replaced by the quiet satisfaction of reconciliation, a much more fulfilling outcome than I had ever dared to imagine. The lessons I had learned, the strength I had discovered within myself, those were the true treasures of this journey. And while their past dismissals had fueled my initial ambition, it was my own quiet determination and the unwavering support of Ben that had ultimately led me to this unexpected, yet deeply gratifying triumph. The subsequent months were a blur of continued growth and transformation for Chic Threads. We opened 2 new flagship stores in prime locations, expanding our footprint while maintaining our commitment to quality and sustainability. We launched a successful capsule collection with a renowned ethical fashion designer, drawing in a new wave of customers and solidifying our reputation as a forward-thinking brand. The financial health of the company continued to improve, and I was able to invest in employee training programs, better benefits, and even a profit-sharing scheme, ensuring that the success of Chic Threads was shared by everyone who contributed to it. My relationship with my parents, though still tentative, continued to evolve. We had dinner periodically, and the conversations became more relaxed, less burdened by the weight of our past. They occasionally offered advice, which I listened to respectfully, sometimes even incorporating their insights, particularly when it came to the nuances of brick-and-mortar retail, a world they still understood intimately. They even started to express genuine pride in my accomplishments, a stark contrast to their previous condescension. It was a slow process of rebuilding, brick by painful brick, but it felt genuine. One afternoon, I was at the original Chic Threads store, the one that had been their pride and joy, overseeing a new window display. The store manager, Sarah, a vibrant young woman I had hired who shared my vision for the brand, approached me, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Ava," she said, "I have a proposition for you. It's a bit unconventional, but I think it could be really beneficial, both for the company and, well, for them." I raised an eyebrow. Them. Your parents, she clarified. "I've been thinking. They have so much experience in this business. They built this company from nothing. And while their management style might have been, shall we say, outdated, their knowledge of customer relations and luxury retail is unparalleled. What if we brought them back, not as executives but as consultants? Perhaps in a specialized role, training our new sales associates on the finer points of luxury customer service, or curating vintage collections. They wouldn't have any decision-making power, of course, and it would be on our terms, and at a fair consulting fee, nothing exorbitant. I listened, surprised by the suggestion. It was a bold idea, one I hadn't considered. My initial reaction was a surge of apprehension. Would it open old wounds? Would it reignite their sense of entitlement? But then, I considered the potential benefits. Their expertise, when channeled correctly, could indeed be valuable. And perhaps, it could be a final step towards full reconciliation, a way for them to contribute to the company they had built, without holding any power. Let me think about it, Sarah. I said, it's a big decision. I discussed it with Ben that evening. He listened patiently, then offered his perspective. It's risky, Ava, but it also shows immense strength on your part. It shows you're not driven by pure revenge anymore. And if they've truly changed, it could be a mutually beneficial arrangement. But you have to be absolutely clear about the boundaries, and you have to be prepared to cut ties if it doesn't work out. His words resonated with me. This wasn't about letting them back into power, but about leveraging their experience in a controlled environment. And it was about giving them a chance to truly understand the new chic threads, and perhaps to find a new sense of purpose within the brand they had once owned. The next day, I called my parents. I have an offer for you. I said, getting straight to the point. I explained Sarah's proposition, outlining the terms clearly and unequivocally. No decision-making power, a fixed consulting fee, a focus on specific areas where their expertise was genuinely needed. There was a long silence on the other end. I could almost hear them processing the information, weighing their pride against the opportunity. Finally, my father spoke, his voice thoughtful. You know, Ava, for a long time all we saw was what we lost. Our company, our prestige. But seeing what you've done with Chic Threads, how you've transformed it, how you've brought it into the 21st century, it's truly remarkable. And to be able to contribute to that, even in a small way, it would be an honor. My mother, her voice filled with a surprising warmth, added, We would love to, darling. We would be absolutely delighted. And so, my parents, Robert and Eleanor Morales, returned to Chic Threads, not as owners, not as executives, but as consultants. They worked with the new sales associates, sharing their vast knowledge of luxury customer service, their anecdotes from the early days of the business, and their passion for fine fabrics and exquisite designs. They were surprisingly good at it, humbled and eager to contribute. They even seemed to enjoy the challenge of learning new things, adapting to the modern retail landscape. The employees, initially curious and a little apprehensive, quickly warmed to them. They saw not the imperious owners of the past, but two experienced professionals who genuinely loved the business and were willing to share their wisdom. My parents, in turn, seemed to thrive in their new roles, finding a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment. Watching them, working alongside the young, enthusiastic team, I realized that the journey had come full circle. Anger, the resentment, the desire for revenge had all faded, replaced by something much more profound. It wasn't about winning anymore, or even about proving a point. It was about growth, about resilience, and about the unexpected possibility of forgiveness and reconciliation. Chic Threads continued to flourish. We expanded internationally, opening our first store in London, followed by another in Tokyo. The brand became synonymous with ethical luxury, a testament to my vision and the hard work of my entire team. My parents, still consultants, occasionally traveled with me, marveling at the global reach of the company they had once owned. Their pride in me was now unreserved, genuine, and deeply moving. One evening, after a particularly successful launch event for our new collection, my father pulled me aside. Ava, he said, his eyes filled with a rare, open emotion. "We always wanted you to be successful, to achieve great things. But we never imagined you would achieve something this extraordinary, on your own terms, with such integrity and vision. We are incredibly proud of you. More than words can say." Ooh. My mother, her eyes glistening, nodded in agreement. "You taught us a valuable lesson, darling. About humility, about true strength, and about the importance of embracing change. We are eternally grateful for the second chance you gave us, not just with the company, but with our family." I looked at them. My parents, the people who had once scorned my choices and dismissed my dreams. And in their eyes, I saw not regret, but respect and a profound, undeniable love. The circle was complete. The past had been acknowledged, the wounds had healed, and a new, stronger bond had been forged, built not on expectation or ambition, but on mutual respect and understanding. And as I looked out at the bustling, vibrant store, filled with happy customers and dedicated employees, I knew that the true victory wasn't just about owning the business, it was about reclaiming my own narrative. Ultimately, about finding peace. My story, once one of quiet defiance, had transformed into a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and the enduring power of family, redefined and rebuilt from the ashes of expectation. It was a story of a cashier who dared to dream bigger, who quietly worked towards her goals, and who ultimately proved everyone wrong, not just by buying their business, but by making it better, and in doing so, transforming herself and her family along the way. And so, the story of Chic Threads, once a narrative of a family divided by ambition and expectation, evolved into something richer, more nuanced. The whispers of the past, the ungrateful daughter narrative, gradually faded, replaced by articles praising my leadership, my innovative approach, and the company's remarkable turnaround. I became a speaker at industry conferences, sharing my journey, always emphasizing the importance of adapting to change and the power of believing in oneself, even when others don't. Ben, my unwavering support system, remained my partner in every sense of the word. Our relationship, forged in the crucible of my quiet ambition and his steadfast belief, deepened with each passing year. We built a life together, one filled with mutual respect, shared dreams, and a quiet understanding that transcended words. He often reminded me that while I had technically fired my parents, I had ultimately given them a chance to rediscover their passion and, perhaps more importantly, to rediscover themselves. My parents, true to their word, continued to excel in their consulting roles. They found a new sense of pride in mentoring the younger generation of sales associates, imparting their vast knowledge of luxury goods and customer relations. They attended our company events, no longer with the strained smiles of distant owners, but with the genuine enthusiasm of valued contributors. They even started their own small online blog, sharing their decades of experience in the fashion industry, a venture that surprisingly gained a modest following. It was a testament to their resilience, their ability to adapt, and their willingness to learn, even in their later years. The flagship store, the one that had witnessed my initial declaration, became a symbol of our transformation. It was a vibrant space, a hub of creativity and commerce, a far cry from the staid, almost museum-like atmosphere it had once possessed. I often walked its floors, observing the customers, listening to the hum of conversation, and watching my parents, now comfortable and confident in their consultant roles, engaging with staff and customers alike. It was a powerful reminder of how far we had all come. One quiet Saturday afternoon, as I was leaving the flagship store, I saw my mother and father sitting on a bench outside, sharing a cup of coffee. They were laughing about something, a genuine, unforced sound that warmed my heart. As I approached, they looked up, their faces beaming with warmth. "Ava, darling," my mother exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. "You're just in time. Your father was just reminiscing about the early days of Chic Threads. He was telling me about the time he nearly set the whole store on fire trying to fix a faulty display light." My father chuckled, shaking his head. "And your mother, bless her heart, tried to put it out with a bottle of champagne. We were quite a pair back then, weren't we?" I smiled, a deep, contented smile. You certainly were. I sat down beside them, feeling a sense of belonging I had rarely experienced in my childhood. The bitterness had truly dissipated, replaced by a quiet, abiding affection. You know, my father said, looking at me, his gaze filled with pride. When we first started this, we thought it was just about building a business, making money. But you, Ava, you've shown us it's so much more than that. It's about building a community, about nurturing talent, about making a real difference. My mother nodded, reaching for my hand. We always wanted the best for you, darling. We just had a very, very narrow idea of what the best looked like. Thank you for showing us a broader, more beautiful perspective. I squeezed her hand, tears pricking at my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. For everything. The journey had been long, fraught with anger, resentment, and the pain of fractured relationships. But it had also been a journey of self-discovery, of unwavering determination, and ultimately, of healing. I had set out to prove them wrong, and in doing so, I had proven something far more important to myself. That true strength lies not in revenge, but in resilience, forgiveness, and the courage to build a future defined by your own terms, even if it means reshaping the very foundations of your past. Chic threads, once a symbol of my parents' success and my perceived failure, had become a testament to my own strength, a thriving enterprise built on a foundation of respect, innovation, and a newfound, genuine family bond. And that in itself was the greatest triumph of all. The narrative of Chic Threads continued to unfold, not just as a business success story, but as a living testament to transformation. Our expansion into international markets brought new challenges and triumphs. The London store, located in the heart of Mayfair, was a bold statement, a direct challenge to established luxury brands. It wasn't enough to simply open a store. We needed to create an experience that resonated with a sophisticated, global clientele. We collaborated with local designers and artisans, leaving British craftsmanship into our ethically sourced collections. The launch party was a whirlwind of international press, fashion influencers, and discerning customers. My parents, who had flown out for the event, stood beside me, their faces alight with a pride that transcended their past ambitions. They spoke with ease and genuine enthusiasm to guests, sharing anecdotes about the brand's origins, their years of experience lending an authentic gravitas to their words. It was a surreal moment, seeing them not as the judgmental figures of my youth, but as proud allies in my journey. The Tokyo store, a year later, presented a different set of complexities. Japanese consumers are renowned for their meticulous attention to detail and their appreciation for unique, high-quality craftsmanship. We immersed ourselves in the local culture, studying trends, and collaborating with traditional textile artists to create exclusive lines that blended our sustainable ethos with Japanese aesthetic principles. The opening of the Tokyo store was less about a flashy party and more about an intimate cultural exchange, with workshops and demonstrations highlighting the artistry behind our garments. My mother, in particular, was captivated by the exquisite embroidery techniques and spent hours observing the artisans, learning and sharing her own insights on fabric and design. My father, ever the strategist, was fascinated by the Japanese retail landscape, the efficiency of their operations, and the discerning nature of their customers. So, their presence wasn't just symbolic, it was genuinely enriching. Beyond the global expansion, I continued to innovate on the domestic front. We launched a circular fashion initiative, encouraging customers to bring in their pre-loved Chic Threads garments for resale or upcycling, offering store credit in return. This not only promoted sustainability, but also created a loyal community of conscious consumers who valued our commitment to environmental responsibility. We partnered with nonprofit organizations dedicated to empowering women in the textile industry, investing a portion of our profits into their training and development programs. This commitment to social impact became a cornerstone of our brand identity, attracting employees and customers who shared our values. The growth of Chic Threads also meant an expanding workforce, and with that, a greater responsibility. I implemented comprehensive training programs, not just for sales skills, but for personal development, financial literacy, and mental well-being. I believed that a company's success was intrinsically linked to the well-being of its employees. We offered generous benefits, flexible work arrangements, and fostered a culture of open communication and mutual respect. The atmosphere in our stores and corporate offices was vibrant, collaborative, and genuinely joyful. This was a stark contrast to the often tense and hierarchical environment my parents had overseen in their final years of ownership. One of the most profound shifts I witnessed was in my parents themselves. The initial humility they displayed after the acquisition had deepened into a genuine appreciation for the simpler things in life. They no longer chased fleeting trends or superficial accolades. My mother, who once meticulously tracked every social event, now spent her free time volunteering at a local animal shelter, her elegant hands gently stroking stray cats. And my father, who had lived and breathed market reports, had taken up gardening, finding solace in the rhythmic turning of the earth and the quiet miracle of growth. Their return to chic threads, in their consulting capacity, was not just about regaining a sense of purpose, it was about rediscovering their passion for the craft itself, stripped of the pressures of ownership and corporate bureaucracy. They found joy in the details, in the texture of a fabric, the perfect drape of a dress, the satisfied smile of a customer. They no longer felt the need to prove themselves to anyone, least of all to me. There were still moments, of course, when the past cast a fleeting shadow. A wistful glance at a framed photograph of the original chic thread store, a subtle sigh when recounting a particularly challenging business deal from their era. But these moments were rare, quickly overshadowed by their engagement with the present and their enthusiasm for the future of the brand. One evening, Ben and I were having dinner with my parents at our apartment. It was a relaxed affair, filled with laughter and easy conversation. My mother, usually so formal, was sharing anecdotes from her volunteer work, her eyes twinkling with amusement. My father, ever the storyteller, recounted a humorous incident from his gardening endeavors. "You know," my father said after a particularly hearty laugh, "I never thought I'd find such contentment outside of the boardroom. This life, it's quieter, but it's richer." My mother nodded, her gaze soft. "We were so focused on accumulating, on proving ourselves, that we missed so much. You, Ava, you've shown us that true wealth isn't just about what you own, but about who you are and the impact you have on others." I felt a warmth spread through me, a feeling of deep peace. Their words were more meaningful than any apology, any admission of guilt. They were a testament to their own growth, their own capacity for change. "It took me a long time to get here," I confessed, my voice a little husky with emotion. "To let go of the anger, the resentment, to see beyond the past." Ben reached for my hand under the table, his touch a silent reassurance. "And you did it, Ava. You broke the cycle. You built something extraordinary, not out of bitterness, but out of a vision for something better." My mother smiled, her eyes filled with love. "And you brought us along for the ride, darling, even when we didn't deserve it." The success of Chic Threads allowed me to establish the Morales Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing scholarships for aspiring fashion designers from underprivileged backgrounds. I wanted to create opportunities that I hadn't seen readily available, to foster talent and innovation regardless of economic circumstances. My parents, moved by the initiative, became active participants, lending their names and their expertise to the Foundation's advisory board. They helped scout promising young designers, offered mentorship, and even organized fundraising events. It was a beautiful full circle. Seeing their entrepreneurial spirit channeled into something so selfless and impactful. The narrative of my life, once defined by my parents' expectations and my own quiet rebellion, had now expanded into something far grander. It was a story of breaking barriers, of defying conventions, and of transforming adversity into opportunity. The lessons I had learned as a cashier, the value of hard work, the importance of genuine connection, these were the cornerstones of my leadership. I often thought about that first day, walking into my father's office, the weight of years of resentment fueling my every step. Satisfaction of those, "You're fired." Words had been immense, a cathartic release of suppressed emotions. But the true, lasting satisfaction came not from that moment of triumph, but from the slow, painstaking process of rebuilding both the business and my relationships. It came from watching Chic Threads flourish, not just as a profitable enterprise, but as a force for good. It came from seeing my parents, humbled but not broken, finding renewed purpose and peace. The future of Chic Threads was bright, filled with endless possibilities. We were exploring new technologies, venturing into virtual reality retail experiences, and expanding our commitment to sustainable sourcing. We were no longer just selling clothes. We were selling a philosophy, a way of life that valued quality, ethics, and community. And in the quiet moments, when the hustle and bustle of the business subsided, I would often reflect on the journey, the cashier uniform, the ramen noodles, the countless hours spent poring over financial statements. Every challenge, every setback, every act of belittlement had contributed to the person I had become, the leader I had grown into. My parents had mocked me, for working retail, and in their dismissal, they had unknowingly handed me the very tools I needed to buy their business and, ultimately, to transform not just their lives, but my own, in ways I could never have imagined. The girl who had once been between careers was now a visionary, a leader, and a testament to the quiet power of a dream, diligently pursued. And in the unfolding chapters of my life, the most profound victory was not just in owning the company, but in owning my own story, fully and completely.